Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up on our first hazardous weather graphic, we've got a wind chill advisory out for the Alaska Range here from Denali Park on eastward to west of the Toe Cutoff. Gusty winds and the cold air temperatures will result in wind chills of 40 to 50 degrees below zero for tonight, possibly lasting into tomorrow as well. And then down here over the southeast coast, high wind warning continues here for the greater Juneau area, or the greater Juneau area here, on up to the north there toward the passes for gusty winds as high as 70 miles per hour to continue. That's until 9 p.m. this evening, expected to drop down to probably advisory levels. And that's what's going on back here to the west there in that yellow shaded area, looking at wind advisories. And then down here to the south, it's a winter storm warning for heavy snow expected to move in later tonight into the day, or for overnight tonight here for the southern southeast coast, or the southeast portion of the Panhandle over towards Stewart and Hyder. 12 to 18 inches of snow expected later tonight. That'll start later tonight or continue through the night and into the day tomorrow. So fairly good shot of snow moving into there with winter weather advisories due to lighter amounts of snow here up in toward the central part of the Panhandle, Petersburg and Wrangell and those areas. Otherwise, up to the north, we've got a winter storm advisory here for the eastern north slope to the Brooks Range there, and all along the Arctic coast. Couple of systems moving through, bringing snow and winds gusting to as high as 35 miles an hour could produce areas of reduced visibilities, areas where the visibility will be reduced to a half mile or less at times. And that'll continue throughout the night tonight, and then probably improving from west to east later on tonight and into tomorrow. Satellite imagery showing one surge here pushing eastward. That's the first one that came through. And then some more moisture here in that west-northwest flow coming up and over the top of a huge ridge of high pressure that's been holding out here over the Bering Sea, although it's beginning to drift back to the west a little bit. But over the top flow, all the moisture and systems here have been traveling northward, losing themselves in the darkness of the Arctic, and then reappearing and coming back down to the southeast here in a much weakened state, but still bringing some breezy conditions again. Could see winds up to 35 miles an hour, and with any new snow, that could reduce the visibilities to a half mile or less at times, really anywhere in those shaded advisory areas along the Arctic coast and the eastern north slope to the Brooks Range. And again, that is overnight tonight and into tomorrow. Otherwise, south of the Bering Strait here, you lose the clouds. Looks like some clearing today over St. Lawrence Island, all the way down to the Pribilofs. Definitely dry conditions. Winds not all that bad. Still northeasterlies coming here out of the interior, so cold air out over the open water, and then picking up moisture, bringing clouds and some light snow showers to the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, but none to the eastern Aleutians. And then also earlier on today, some clouds, one surge of moisture coming southwestward, brought snow to Kodiak Island, has since dropped off to the southwest. Snow has ended there. It looks like you'll be into, as this frontal boundary pushes northward and northwest a little bit, drier air coming down from the northeast there, so the snow threat's about over for Kodiak, and it will be non-existent for the North Gulf Coast as well and southern Alaska. But you can see mid and high level clouds here coming northward across the northern southeast coast, with snow already occurring throughout much of the day today down over the southern areas. Back edge of the front actually right in through here. It's kind of a double feature there right through here where the occlusion is, and then the main back edge of the front right still west of the Queen Charlotte Islands. And you can see the this portion of the band pulling northwestward very slowly, almost stalling here in the last couple of frames, and sliding northward. More moisture will be coming up as well with that main front and the southerly flow on the eastern side of that low pressure area, with the low center staying down to the south, really just drifting northward. Way out west, again, big high pressure, tremendous ridge here over the northern Bering Sea, centered at the surface over the northern Bering Sea, with a ridge aloft across the entire area down, poking up from the Aleutians all the way up farther north. But the wind flow through the northern portion of that ridge pushing this frontal boundary with the snow and an increase in the winds into the western Arctic coast. Of course, this already pushing off to the east there, and then some more moisture coming in from the northwest on those winds. Otherwise, 1,041 millibar high kept temperatures well below zero and winds light here over the eastern interior, and that extends westward to another center there, St. Lawrence Island, near 1,040 millibars. Northeast flow here on the south side of the ridge, keeping cold air out over the Bering Sea. Not as strong as on the winds, kind of a daily decrease in those winds here since what we had on Friday. A little breezy today, Kodiak Island, with these snow showers having moved on through now, and just dry air back to the northeast, and not too bad for the Aleutians. Look like some clearing today, but windier, although the rain has now pushed back to the west from where it was yesterday and last night here over the far western Aleutians. Winds have diminished a little too, so it was an improvement over yesterday here out west, and about the same for the remainder of the Bering Sea and central Aleutians, as well as eastern Aleutians. Better conditions. See a building gradient here over the northern southeast coast. Quite a lot of lines there. Steep gradients. That's what's supporting those gusty winds. The Taku wind gusts 70 to possibly 75 miles an hour. And that's going to continue till about 9 p.m. this evening, and then they ease down a little bit. You can see quite a gradient all along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, and even building a little bit here along the Alaska Range is where you have the wind advisories, or the wind chill advisories, out for the central and eastern Alaska Range. Moving on to forecast for tonight, that doesn't change a whole lot here, except snow spreading northward into the Panhandle, all the way up into Canada there, past the passes. So rolling up the Klondike Highway this evening and right into Canada. Big surge of moisture here, probably mixing with rain at sea level down here over the southern areas. But again, looking for 12 to 18 inches of snow over towards Stewart and Hyder there with the higher elevations. And north of the frontal boundary, all snow, some of that blowing and drifting. The heaviest amounts central and southern areas, with this moisture pulling westward, but then taking a turn to the southwest, so not really making it, expecting it to advance any farther west, at least through tonight, than Yakutat. Otherwise, north of the Alaska Range, upslope, low clouds and flurries there, mostly Nebezna to Tok and Northway, and those areas clearing back out over Eagle. And the Yukon Flats, so well below zero for the lows tonight. A little breezy here over the southwest part of the state, Bristol Bay, but nothing too strong. And still breezy, but less breezy for the Alaska Peninsula, but still holding on to those flurries and lower flying conditions there on the Bering Sea side. High pressure holding, and snow, another surge here pushing eastward over the eastern Arctic coast. For tomorrow, just some light snow areas of here left behind along the north slope and the eastern Arctic coast. Another clear, cold day over interior Alaska with good VFR. Northeast winds start picking up some flurries and a little more cloudiness here over the southwest interior, especially over the Kilbrook Mountains. And no change for the Alaska Peninsula, no change for the Bering Sea. Storminess stays way out to the west. And again, warming temperatures, so rain or snow changing to rain for the southern southeast coast here. Another trough swinging northward. It's going to be where the rain snow line is, a little touch and go. I put it along the frontal boundary at sea level. So south of there, mixture of precipitation becoming rain probably for Prince of Wales Island in the afternoon, with snow to the north and continued gusty north wind, outflow winds here for the northern Panhandle and along the North Gulf Coast as well. And then for the outlook for Tuesday, system pushes eastward finally there, and it stays dry and chilly up over the northern southeast coast, with that gradient continuing to feed Arctic air southward into the area. Tight gradient along the North Gulf Coast, maybe some flurries, Copper River Basin, southeast interior. Fair and cold over the remainder of the state. No change, still northeast winds 15 to 30 miles an hour out along the coast. Not so much for the Alaska Peninsula. High pressure with clouds underneath, areas of low clouds there for the Arctic coast. Fair. High pressure dominating the Bering Sea again through Tuesday, with storminess way out there, barely, not even the front, back over the Sea of Okhotsk. And for the lows for tomorrow morning, Monday morning, anywhere from 25 to 35 below here over the eastern interior, and then warming to above zero out over the Seward Peninsula, 20s in the Bering Sea, lower 30s over the Aleutians, and lows in the teens to near 30, or in some cases into the lower to mid 30s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, 20 south central Alaska, Copper River Basin edging above zero a little bit, below zero north of the Alaska Range to about the Brooks Range, into the mid-teens there possibly for the western Arctic coast, mid to upper teens for the Seward Peninsula, 20s, lower 30s for the Bering Sea, and lower 20s northern Panhandle to mid to upper 30s in the south, and highs in the lower to mid 20s south central Alaska. Lows for the morning on Tuesday. Shaping up like this, again, well below zero, down to 20, 25 below, possibly Copper River Basin, down to 30 below in areas here, the colder areas in the eastern interior, milder on the Arctic coast, and getting above zero here in the west to lower 20s again, St. Lawrence Island, mid-20s in the Pribilofs. And for the highs on Tuesday afternoon, below zero in the east, above zero in the west, and mildest conditions will be over the Aleutians, mid to upper 30s, a little cooler there for the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, our first graphic here showing a lot of IFR from the northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, through the Straits, Seward Peninsula. That moisture coming in from the west-northwest, westerly flow over the top of the ridge here over the Bering Sea. Lots of IFR into the northern Koyukuk, Kobuk valleys, all the way out into the Arctic Ocean. And VFR down here to the south, starting out a little marginal here along the central and eastern Alaska Range in areas at times, especially in the morning hours. And then IFR along the border there of the entire southeast coast, otherwise marginal. And then for the afternoon, improving here along the Alaska Range, becoming VFR on the east side there. Definitely staying VFR back here through the west central interior up to the Brooks Range, where you still have some marginal and IFR conditions north slope, and here on the north side of the Seward Peninsula. And now just south of St. Lawrence Island, the zone of IFR with marginal VFR extending south-southeastward to the Alaska Peninsula. And staying VFR along the coastline here, the Gulf of Alaska. Kodiak may get grazed with a little bit of marginal stuff, and that'll extend right into the Panhandle. And for the Tuesday morning outlook, we've got still marginal and IFR here across the north slope, mostly marginal. IFR mostly up against the mountains there, especially up toward the crest, and then patched there off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Lower conditions here over the northern Bering Sea persisting, marginal to IFR improving right through here across the Fox Islands, then back to marginal over the southwest Bering and western Aleutians. Marginal VFR now over the southern southeast coast, becoming IFR up there to the north. And then for the Tuesday afternoon forecast, IFR developing here over the southern Panhandle there, and then some marginal up the east side of the border, but pretty good here over the northern areas. Gulf of Alaska looking good. Some possible marginal VFR on the actually in the 40-mile country there, north side or northeast side of the Wrangels in the Alaska Range. Good VFR over most of the interior, now extending all the way out to the central Arctic coast. Lingering marginal stuff over the eastern north slope, and out west. Good VFR here all along the coast down to Unalaska to Nikolsky. Then you get in some marginal VFR for the remainder of the Aleutians, marginal VFR for the Pribilofs. Passes tomorrow, Anatuvik, marginal IFR conditions on the north side, same forecast for Adigan. Lowest conditions on that northern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, another VFR day coming up tomorrow. Great conditions for rainy and windy as well, good VFR. Isabel could start out marginal in the morning, but becoming VFR. Same trend for Mentastic, could see some lower conditions early on, but generally a VFR day. And Tanita, VFR. Portage, VFR. Chilkoot and White starting out IFR, then with one surge of moisture lifting northward, another one coming in from the south, but well to the south. Look for an improving trend throughout the day, starting out low and then becoming VFR, hopefully by early afternoon. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet tomorrow, down near the Queen Charlotte's there at the surface, excuse me, cutting across the southern Panhandle and up the coastline to about Elfin Cove, then westward, down the east side of Kodiak Island, all the way out to about Atka. Warm air aloft that upper level ridge pushing up, so we've got 6,000 foot freezing levels now over the Russian Far East, 2,000 feet down to the Pribilofs, and actually cooler air aloft here across the Aleutians. And icing looking like this, not a whole lot, none out west of the Bering Sea. Some leftover moisture keeping a chance of some icing going, especially over the eastern Beaufort Sea coast and north slope. And then a little bit more slipping on down from the northwest or west-northwest into the western coast. And then the moisture here at the storm is mostly going by to the south there. Look for some of that to lift northward here. So it could be some considerable rime icing over the extreme southeast coast there. Actually, Prince of Wales Island, Ketchikan, Annette, Metlakatla, Heidelberg, maybe Klawock and those areas, diminishing as you head north and cutting off across the northern southeast coast. Moving on to the jet stream at 33,000 feet, we still have this tremendous ridge here over the Bering Sea. It's kind of shifting around, pulling back a little bit to the west, and that's keeping that northerly jet here right across the western part of the state, 80 to 90 knots, keeping the cold trough locked in here over the Northwest Territories, another center down there in the Gulf of Alaska that's generally pulling northeastwards. That's keeping this part of the jet well to the south of the Panhandle. And at 9,000 feet, northerly flow, cold northerly flow 25 to 35 here on the north slope, then 40 to 45, as high as 55 knots there along the western Alaska range, and 50 to 60 knots over Bristol Bay, turning east 30 to 40 there for the Aleutians, and southeast 35 on the south coast of the Panhandle. Same forecast at 3,000 feet, southeast 25 to 35 along the southeast coast, 40 to 50 southwest interior. Turbulence, widespread moderate chop here over the southwest interior northward.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's a dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy in these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things, coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me, even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48. I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the Northern Lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the Northern Lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, you know, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just, you know, spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything. So you got to remember that, you know, luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis here for Sunday, showing continued westward and southwestward expansion of the ice. Not quite as, not seeing that 10 to 15 nautical mile per day we saw for yesterday and Friday. A little something a little less, but trend still to less expansion to the west, although it's continued to increase over the next couple of days as weaker northeast winds and the cold temperatures continue here across the eastern and northern Bering Sea. And for the coastal water forecast, south to southeast at about 30 knots with these seas 18 to 20 feet. Same speed on the winds up here to the north, but seas down a little bit, 14 to 16 feet. And for northerly canal, north 45 tomorrow, coming down from today with still 60 knot gusts and 55 knots. So storm warning there for Stevens Passage with higher gusts. And then for the Clarence Strait area, southeast 25 with gusts of 40. And the outlook for the next day, this must be reversed here. That would be north at 50 with gusts 65 for Stevens Passage, north 55 for Northerly Canal, and northeasterlies 25 to 30 knots here for the coast, and north 20 for Clarence Strait, and lighter winds north 20 on the south coast with those seas still hanging in at 16 feet. And then for Prince William Sound, north winds 25 knots with 4-foot seas there. Some higher gusts out of the northern bays. Northeast 25, small craft advisories here for the North Gulf Coast. Pick up to 30 knots, but stay under gale force there for the Barren Islands. But for southern Cook Inlet and Kachemak Bay, northeast to north winds at 40 knots Monday with seas around 10 feet. And then for the following day on Tuesday, north of the Forelands here, winds come down to 15 knots out of the northeast. Back down to small craft advisories for the southern inlet and Kachemak Bay, really dropping off here for not only the Barrens but along the western Gulf Coast, down to 15 to 20 from the northeast, and those 20-knot winds, 10-foot seas for the eastern zone. And then Prince William Sound, northeast to 20. Out for Kodiak Island, north winds tomorrow, 30 knots. Some gales here from Sitkinak all the way down to Cape Sarachev, 35 to 40 knots. Northerlies at 35, Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Bristol Bay just shy of a gale with 30-knot winds out of the north in 8-foot seas. Next day, no change in Bristol Bay, and then those 30-knot winds now covering all of the Alaska Peninsula out of the north, 9 to 12-foot seas. Castle Cape on up to Sitkinak, coming down to 20 knots. Same thing for the east side of Kodiak Island. Small craft advisories continue for Shelikof Strait. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, for Unalaska Island, north winds 30 knots, seas 12 feet. And then to the west here, north to northeast coming down to 20 knots. Easterlies at about 20 or so here for the central Aleutians, and then gradually increasing up to 30 knots there for those western zones. And then for Tuesday, northeast or east-northeast at 20, and seas coming down under 20 feet now out west. Seas right around 10 feet with northeast at 20 to Atka Island. East of Atka Island, we've got small craft advisories here across the Fox Islands for north to northeast winds 25 to 30 knots, strongest across Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast, gale force northerlies here south of Nunivak Island. Small craft advisories for the Pribilofs, north of Nunivak Island. St. Lawrence Island really coming or staying light, but north picking up a little bit there to 15 knots and about 20 for St. Matthew Island. And then for the Tuesday outlook, no change up here over the northern Bering Sea, and northerlies 20 to 30 knots along the southwest coast, north 20 for the Pribilof, seas 7 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west winds 20 knots tomorrow and falling back to 15 from the northwest on the central coast, becoming northeast 15 here, and then light and variable from Cape Beaufort down to the Bering Strait. And that stays in kind of a light variable pattern here, basically from the north-northeast, but barely a breeze. East at 10 for the west side, no wind for the central coast, and westerlies now 10 to 15 for the eastern Beaufort Sea. And for tonight, again, winter storm warnings for the southern panhandle over towards Stewart and Hyder for 12 to 18 inches of snow to fall in that area by tomorrow afternoon. And then snow spreading northward. High wind warning out for the greater Juneau area for Taku wind gusts of 70 miles per hour until 9 p.m. this evening. And chance of snow maybe reaching Yakutat, but no farther to the west. Look for gusty outflow winds along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and wind chill advisory for the eastern Alaska Range for wind chills 40 to 50 below tonight into early tomorrow. And winter weather advisories will be shifting mostly to the east side here of the Arctic coast and north slope with that system due to visibilities, 35-mile-an-hour winds, reducing visibilities. That'll be better tomorrow, but still a lot of clouds and flurries of light snow left behind. No change over the interior. And again, warming temperatures trying to push into the southern panhandle, and stays windy with some light snow possibly over the northern southeast coast. A few flurries here along the west coast. And then for Tuesday, strong high pressure continues to dominate the weather pattern over most of Alaska, with the exception being the panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.